I've been doing night shifts at this old motel for a few months now. It's the kind of place you'd expect on one of those ghost hunting shows, with its flickering lights, outdated decor, and haunting silence. I never pictured myself here, but after losing my last job, I was desperate. The motel sits just outside a nearly forgotten little town tucked far enough from civilization that cell service barely works. As if things weren't already eerie, tonight I was the only staff member on duty. My shift started like normal, 10 p.m. sharp. Earlier that day, the manager warned me to expect a large group checking in by 10:30. Strange considering full bookings are rare. The motel's small and usually quiet. All rooms are accessed from inside only. No exterior doors like those roadside motels. So hearing that a full group had taken every room felt suspicious. I tried to stay focused, sticking to my routine, checking the register, tidying the desk, and prepping keycards for the night. Still, something didn't sit right. I felt it building in my gut. By 10:30, I was tense, waiting for the group to arrive. I kept glancing toward the entrance, expecting a crowd, but only one man stepped inside. He moved slowly, his footsteps muffled by the old carpet under his shoes. He looked strange, dressed in an old-fashioned suit, his face mostly obscured beneath a wide-brimmed hat. His eyes, barely visible in the dim light, glinted in a disturbing way. He approached the counter and placed a bundle of bills before me. "I'm here to check in," he said, his voice smooth but oddly cold. "Right," I said, eyeing the stack. "You're with the group, right?" I glanced toward the door, hoping others would follow, but no one came in. "They'll be along," he said with a grin. Grin. "No need to worry, I'll take care of everything. Usually, we ask for ID from every guest checking in, but when someone pays in cash and business is slow, we look the other way." "All right," I sighed. "You're in room 105. I handed him the key, unease prickling my spine. "Also, when will the rest be arriving?" I asked. "In due time," he said, turning to go. "Oh, and one more thing." He stopped, half turning, that grin stretching wider. "I need to give you instructions. I'll be back in 10. Before I could respond, he disappeared into the hallway. I watched him vanish into the gloom, the dim lights barely illuminating his path. A heavy silence fell over the lobby as I waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Then 15. I glanced at the wall clock, its ticking suddenly deafening. The building creaked and groaned, and then I heard it, faint, like distant children laughing. My head snapped up. I stared through the glass entrance, rising from my chair and trying to spot movement outside. But the parking lot was still, bathed in dim orange light. My skin prickled. Maybe guests had brought their kids, I thought, though I couldn't shake the feeling something was wrong. Suddenly the man appeared again, standing at the desk without warning. I jumped, my heart slamming in my chest. "Hey, did I startle you?" he asked, that grin tugging at his mouth. His eyes still gleamed under the shadow of his hat. I laughed nervously. "And not really," I lied, keeping it casual. He leaned forward slightly, his voice low and measured. I listened carefully. He said, "Solman," he said. "This group I'm with, they're not ordinary. There are rules you need to follow tonight." He pulled a folded note from his coat and held it out. "Read this," he said, still grinning as I reached for it. The way he watched me sent cold dread crawling through me. "Okay," I murmured, staring at the paper in my hands. "Pay attention," he added, turning away, his head still facing me until he melted into the shadows again. I stared after him, mouth dry, feeling like I'd been roped into something I didn't fully understand. Something wrong. Yeah. Frozen in fear, I hesitated. Then it began, screaming from the hallway. Ragged, guttural screams echoing through the building, bouncing off walls, slamming into my brain. I snapped to the clock. 1:32 a.m. Rule 4 flashed through my mind. Don't leave the desk between 1:30 and 2 a.m., no matter what you hear. Not even if someone begs for help. I gripped the counter, muscles tensed. The screams intensified. A raw, primal cry filled the air, clawing into my skull. I jumped in my seat, heart pounding. I glanced again. 1:37 a.m. Time crawled, each second a lifetime. The screams didn't fade. They multiplied, echoing from every corridor, growing louder, more frantic, more tormented with every breath. "Stay," I whispered, hands clenching the desk until my knuckles whitened. I couldn't run. This place wasn't normal. These rules weren't lies. The screams peaked, then changed. They weren't human anymore. Grotesque and twisted, monstrous roars shredded my nerves. I shut my eyes tightly, trying to block it out. Sounded like claws dragging across my mind. Each scream a knife in my sanity. Tick, tick. The clock marked 1:45 a.m. 15 more minutes. I could make it. I had to. The cries morphed again, now sobs. Wailing, desperate. Like tortured souls trapped in endless pain. I dug my nails into my palms, forcing myself to stay put, no matter what. But don't leave the desk. The words repeated in my head. The only thing keeping me grounded. The clock inched forward, each tick slower than the last. 1:50 a.m. The cries drew closer, now pressing against the walls as if they'd burst through at any moment. I bit down on my lip, hard enough to draw blood, the pain keeping me tethered to reality. The room tightened. The air grew thick. The screams, no longer screams, rose into a chaotic, swirling mess of pure agony. I clenched my jaw, sweat dripping down my temples. 1:58 a.m., just 2 more minutes. The howling quieted slightly. Still there, but fading. Like the building itself had absorbed the noise, swallowing it whole. Tick, tick, kizik, each one slamming through my skull like hammer blows. I stared at the clock, begging the hands to move faster. 1:59 a.m. almost. Almost. And then, 2:00 a.m., the screaming stopped. A blanket of silence fell over the lobby. So cold, it burned. It burned. I collapsed into the chair, gasping, heart racing like a war drum. It was over. For now. Silence wrapped the room in icy stillness heavier than sound. My breathing slowed, but dread lingered. The fear had stained my thoughts. 2 a.m. The rules still loomed, carved into my brain like warnings etched in stone. I took a shaky breath, trying to relax. My hands left faint, clammy prints on the desk. I wanted to bolt, but that man's words played on a loop. He'd on a loop. I don't leave before sunrise, or you might not return. Return from where? I didn't want to know, so I stayed, waiting, straining to hear anything. But all I heard was the hum of lights, flickering above me. They buzzed like they, too, were struggling to endure. I watched the dim hallway to the guest rooms, expecting something to emerge from the shadows. Seconds dragged. The silence was worse than the screams. At least the screaming gave me something to fight. But this quiet, it gnawed at my mind. Then I noticed movement. My breath caught. Slowly, I turned my head, and there it was again. A small figure, just barely visible at the hallway's edge. My stomach dropped. A child. My thoughts snapped back to the rules. Rule 2. If you encounter a weeping child in the lobby or hallway, do not engage. Just turn around and softly hum to yourself until you're out of view. The child wasn't crying, at least not yet. Its little form stood motionless. For a second, I assumed it was just a guest's kid playing a creepy prank. But something in my gut said no, this was something else, something not quite human. The child tilted its head slightly, like it was trying to get a clearer look at me, trying to read my response. A chill crept down my spine. I needed to act now. I slowly turned my back, keeping my eyes glued to the desk. My heart thudded like a drum, echoing through my ribs. My ribs. Then a sound, soft, pitiful. A whimper. The child had started crying. I forced myself to hum, steady and low, like a lullaby. It felt wrong coming out, awkward, robotic. But I didn't stop. I hummed some half-forgotten tune from childhood. Something my mom sang when I had bad dreams. I focused on the desk, refusing to acknowledge the thing behind me. The sobbing grew louder, insistent, like it was trying to burrow into my thoughts. I hummed louder, my voice shaking. Every nerve in my body screamed to turn around, to see how close it was. But I didn't. Don't look. Don't even think about it. Gradually the crying faded, softening to sniffles, then nothing. Silence. I gulped a breath, shaky and slow. Still humming, I edged to the far side of the desk, putting a solid wall of wood between me and whatever that was. I risked a side glance. The hall was empty. I collapsed into the chair, my body shaking. I shut my eyes briefly, trying to find some scrap of calm. I had followed the rule. It was over, for now. But it felt like a minor win in a nightmare without end. 2:17 a.m. The seconds dripped by like a leaky faucet. Storet by like a leaky faucet. Time moved, even if the night felt frozen. A creak to my right jolted me. I turned to the lobby mirror, an old ornate thing with a carved wood frame. I saw myself pale, exhausted, eyes wide. I looked like a ghost. Then I noticed it, behind me near the hallway. A figure. My heart skipped. The child again. But this time, I could see its face in the reflection. My stomach twisted. Its eyes were empty black holes, and its mouth curved into an unnatural wide grin. Rule 9. If a guest reflection looks back with the wrong expression, Avert your eyes immediately. I jerked my gaze away, heart pounding hard enough to crack ribs. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to scrub the image from my mind. That haunting face, that sick grin, it burned behind my eyelids. I stayed like that, eyes closed, drawing slow, deep breaths. The air had turned colder, like the thing behind me had drained all warmth from the room. My thoughts buzzed, restless, panicked. The need to look back grew like an itch under my skin. Don't look. Just breathe. Let it pass. Seconds. Minutes. Time lost meaning. Finally, I opened my eyes. Just enough to look down at the desk. I didn't dare glance at the mirror. I listened hard. Nothing. No steps. No breaths. Only the lights buzzing above and my own ragged breathing. I peeked toward the hallway. Empty. I faced the lobby again, avoiding the mirror. Safe for now. My heartbeat slowed to a steady thump. I sat, numb, staring at the desk, trying to process everything. This wasn't just a bad shift. This was something else entirely. For a fleeting moment, I found peace in the mundane. Breathing, light humming, the scratch of my fingers on wood. But the dread hung around like a bad smell. Slowly, I found my footing again. I closed my eyes, grounding myself. What am I doing here? I wondered. I should leave, run. But then his voice echoed back. You may find yourself unable to return. Was it a warning or a trap? I glanced at the glass doors, the parking lot just beyond. My car was right there. I could grab my keys, sprint outside, and be gone in seconds. But what did he mean by return? My fingers tapped the desk edge, nervous. I could leave. But what if I was wrong? I looked at the clock again. 3:00 a.m. I decided to wait. I'd made it this far. If sunrise was my salvation, I wouldn't throw it away now. The seconds oozed by. Each tick mocked my nerves. By 3:30, I was frazzled, but holding on. Maybe the worst had passed. 0 a.m. I listened to the hum of lights, the rustle of papers, my own breathing. A rhythm. Proof I was still here. Still sane. 4:30 a.m. I stood and paced behind the desk, rubbing my arms. The cold deepened. The shadows lengthened, but I held tight to the thought of sunrise. Just hang on. Finally, 5 a.m. 1 hour left. I let myself breathe, a cautious relief. But something shifted, the air thickened. I turned toward the hallway. Dread sank into my gut. Shadows moved, and then they appeared. The hallway was full. Men, women, children, standing in silence, staring at me, unmoving. My heart dropped. Rule 1. If you see any of us in the hallway at night, do not acknowledge us. We are there for a reason, and it has nothing to do with you. I stared forward, away from them, hands gripping the desk edge. I felt them, like a weight on my chest. They wanted me to break the rule. To look, to see. Time dragged. I heard rustling fabric, soft breaths. My instincts screamed to run, to flee, but I held fast. One figure moved. I sensed it, not saw it. A subtle shift in the shadows. I couldn't breathe. Muscles locked. Then, a whisper, soft, cold. Right behind me. Oh, look at us, it said. See what you've ignored. I bit my lip, grounding myself with pain. Okay, this, huh? Don't look. Do not acknowledge. The voices multiplied, soft murmurs like wind through dead trees. I focused on the clock. 1 hour. Just survive 1 hour. The whispers faded. Slowly, I cracked my eyes. The hallway, empty. Relief hit me like a wave. I checked the clock. 5:50 a.m. 10 minutes. Almost there. I didn't relax, not fully. I glanced at the mirror, my reflection, tired, shaken, but hopeful. Almost done. Then 6:00 a.m. light crept through the glass doors. Morning had arrived. The pressure lifted. I stood unsteady, breathing deep. It was over. I'd made it. I stepped outside, cold air wrapping around me like a blessing. The parking lot bathed in gold. Mist rising, birds chirping. I turned for one last look at the lobby. It looked normal. Boring. Like nothing had happened. I grabbed my jacket, stepped outside, and let the door swing shut. I walked to my car, sunlight on my face, warmth sinking in. I slid into the seat, started the engine, and glanced back. For a moment, I thought I saw someone watching from a window. A shadow. Then, gone. I shook my head and drove. The motel vanished behind me. I let out a weak laugh. I'd survived. But one thing was certain. I was never coming back.